now that we've got some people joining us, I would like just to say thank you everyone for attending the last stream. We had some really good numbers hitting in that stream, and we're getting a lot more followers and subscribers now, so I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me to have all the support and people's interest in the project as well. So yeah, if you feel like there's anyone that you feel might enjoy the stream as well, please, I'd appreciate it if you share it around, and I'll do my part as well. But otherwise, yeah, I hope people have been enjoying the stream so far. The part that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through and doing secondary action over the top of our existing blocking plus. So blocking plus at this point is practically like a first pass of it is finished on her animation. So I will play that in a moment. And then what we're going to be going through today is adding things like animation on her hair and her clothing. Mostly the jacket, because the jacket's the thing that's going to be a bit more like flapping and dragging and that kind of stuff. So to your point that Animation Addict just said about question here, about regarding overlap, because of the style of this project, it's actually going to be quite snappy, and I want to be favoring the poses, as we have been for like the majority of the style in general. So I don't want to add too much like flowy motions to it, because then it starts to feel too realistic, and less like an anime, at least like a typical anime. So obviously you can still, just to caveat that, you can still get very fluid, very high quality anime where they like tracking and everything's very like has a nice flow and drag to it and stuff. But I think for the era of anime I'm trying to convey, they don't do that as much. So our execution we're going to be doing today is going to be quite different to how you may want to convey weight, like I just answered. I've just added a new mod just to read out people's comments and stuff, so I don't accidentally miss something as well. So yeah, if you have any questions, it will be read out loud now on stream, which is cool.
I now have a better understanding of overshoot and settle. Can you please explain how to think about overlap while adding weight?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Glad that you have a better understanding of overshoots and settles. Explaining overlap whilst adding weight. So, overlap... Well, first of all, if you want to add weight to something, it's more about the time it takes to ease in and out more than it is the spacing. The spacing typically can be a little bit more progressive. So in other words, you spend a little bit more time gradually coming out rather than like holding and then snapping into like your breakdown, etc. So you spend a bit more time gradually coming out of things if you want to give something weight. The same way, like you could go 1, 2, or it could be 1, 2. So like if the feeling of progressing out is where like the weight comes in, but then also it's mostly in the timing. So that's the weight aspect of it. As to how to incorporate that with overlap, it's more a case of defining how much time you want to take to reach the breakdown on the arm. Say it's an arm, or the head. Obviously all these things like a head and an arm have different weights, right? But I would say that as to how much overlap you want to convey as well is a big part of it, because when something has more weight, its range of motion is typically less. Or if you want to have something with a broad range of motion, it means it requires even more time. So typically, because when something has a large mass and it's heavy, when something has more weight, typically more often than not, it's not going to be moving as much unless you want it to be very strong. So say something like King Kong, obviously he's huge and has a lot of weight, right? I would say that like with King Kong, because he's very strong, you expect him to be able to move quite quickly, even though he's very big, but it still takes time for him to move, right? The same way with like Pacific Rim, like they're huge, and so like they take time to like get into those big poses, but they still want them to hit the poses. So it really does depend on what type of weight you're trying to convey and what kind of style you're animating in as well. Those are the two main factors. And then like you have to consider the inertia and like the weight of your character, like how much mass they're made of, how heavy they are, and then that will dictate better the type of timing you may want to convey. But yeah, more weight equals more time is the general philosophy. But yeah, all that to say, I will pause the music and I will play the shot in its current state. And then the part that we did last stream was just the connecting point of where she lands. So this part here. So I need to make a new play blast. There are a couple of things I have fixed in the meantime as well. So there is a part, you'll notice some of the older animation, like around here, you can see her hand is actually disconnecting from the rail that she's climbing, and her feet aren't touching the chair correctly. Somewhere along the line, the screen space matching changed, so I have fixed that now in the current version. Another thing that I've also fixed is, or added, is you'll notice now we have a mask for the character. So I've added, I was initially playing around with the idea of having like some goggles for her, like a sci-fi lens. But I think maybe that's too on the nose, and this still feels kind of like cybernetic, which is kind of cool. So yeah, this is what I've gone with for now, and then obviously I need to texture it and shade it and stuff later. But that's what I'm using temporarily. So we are actually going to see her eyes and her brows as like expressions, so maybe you'll be able to still convey some personality in there. I also want to make her irises purple to make it more cybernetic. But yeah, those are little things I'm going to change later, but I'm just adding stuff slowly to give me the foundations to build on as we go along. Yeah, so what we're going to be doing today, like I say, is her hair and her jacket. And one thing that's always bothered me is at some point down the line, I had posed her jacket for like a different pose, but then it stuck with the same pose for this part. So you can see the jacket is just like clipping through her body. It's always annoyed me, but I knew I was going to change it later, so I just ignored it. But that's definitely something I want to add today. So in aid of efficiency, typically what we would even have on a production is essentially a library of different poses that can make it more efficient. Now, you wouldn't normally have that for things like clothing or hair so much. Sometimes you have it for hair. It really depends on whoever's building the library. But since I'm building my own library here, I actually think it just makes sense for me to get through this quickly, because obviously this is a long shot, right? We're talking like a nearly 1500 frame shot. So in aid of efficiency, before we get started on actually posing in the jacket and the hair, I'm going to go through in just default pose, and I'm going to make some broader poses for the jacket itself and the hair. And then I'm going to be blending in and out of those, and then we can tween from those. So that will just give us something much more functional to work with. The same way that I created hand poses from every other, like you saw I had hand poses in the studio library as we've been going through blocking and blocking plus throughout the entire shot. All of these I made beforehand so that I didn't have to like manually pose the hands every time, and it gave me a base to work from. So yeah, that's the part I want to do first. And then that should make it much more efficient as we're going through and layering things in. And that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to add the mask in there, because I didn't want to pose the hair and then when I add the mask later, it clips through the mask. So now I actually at least have that as a function to like build from. it shouldn't be as like destructive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take one of the frames from the beginning, and I'm just gonna reset her pose. So I just want to bring her back down to default. Hopefully it doesn't crash when I do this. So it looks like her translations are reset, but her rotations are not. There we go. So obviously we've got her sniper there. I'm going to ignore that for now. That's not an issue we need to be concerned with. But I do want to do like her hair, for instance. So we have all her hair controls down here, and we have her jacket controls down here too. So I'm just going to go through and start to pose these out just to give us something to build from. So I also need to create a new folder within the major rig. So let's go create folder. Let's call this hair. And then we'll have another one. And then we'll call that jacket. So for her hair, I'm going to have, obviously we have her default. I think it's going to be good to have that anyway, but just to have something saved with. For some reason it isolates. Yeah, for some reason it like really pulls out when I, yeah, it really pulls out when I like focus on the hair controls. Sometimes rigs do that. I don't even know why it happens. So I got a question here, first time in the chat. Yeah, thank you for joining us. So in a typical production and yours, would this type of hair and clothing posing and animation be done and then simulated over the top? Or would simulation do something instead of posing? That's a really good question. And it really does depend on the production. I would say more often than not, for character animation especially, it's typically posed, like key poses are at least established if there's like some kind of control that you would like to add, but it's not ever mandatory. Sometimes animators on character animation shots will still just like leave the hair as it is and let simulation do a pass over it, as long as it's like appealing to whatever poses you're producing. I think there's maybe too neglectful to say you had like a really, like an afro or something really large, like a large bulk of hair, and then you like drop the head down, but now the hair is so round that it's covering the face. Obviously you want to pose it in a way that either you compensate with the head or you move the hair, right? So I don't think you ever, well, for me, I never want to neglect the hair, but I would at least pose it. Whether I add breakdowns, overlap, and follow through, you can do. I think it's more a bonus, but for me, I still do it myself because I like to have control over how the hair responds in my shot. And then because simulation will likely do a pass over at the top of that, they may be more inclined to actually reduce the simulation influence, and therefore I've had more control over the final outcome of what the hair is doing. For clothing, if it's like small things like sleeves, obviously I don't really bother with that stuff. I'll let that be more simulated. But if it's like a dress and it's obviously got like a large drape or a cape or something like that, I also would like to control that more. Like I'm working on something at the moment at work with a very large drape on the character, like 4 times its length of the character itself, and I could just like leave it in default pose and let simulation do their pass on it, but then it won't be posed in an appealing way for the rest of it. So I definitely spend quite a bit of time getting all the overlap and follow through and doing my version of it, and then let simulation do something over the top. So it really does depend on the production, really. But when it's more VFX, I haven't worked in VFX, so take this with a grain of salt, but my impression would be that they would, most of the like muscle simulation, the hair simulation, any cloth on a character would typically be very heavily simulation driven and less so keyframe animated. Unless it's like a performance thing. So say like, I don't know, someone flexes a muscle or someone swishes their hair and they want to control how the swish works timing wise, then maybe the animator would do a pass on that just to help drive the simulation. But most of the time I think people will just let the simulation do itself. So it's really down to the animator and the production. Some will have hard rules. Some, in our case, we don't really have many rules on what we're working on right now. It's more down to whether you want to or not. Yeah, very good question. Cool. So I'm going to set a pose with our default hair here. Let's just pose it a bit more to the camera. So we'll just call this neutral. And then I want to do one where we're going to switch. Basically, we want to do the directions, right? So we want to go left, down, up, back, right as well, like in each direction. And then I can select if I want to have like a change in timing and stuff. I can do that later. But one thing that's quite nice about her hair as well is it has these like bulk ones and then the individual ones over the top of it, which is quite nice. So for instance, in here, I think these are also translatable, which is really nice. So it means I can like art direct the hair a little bit more, but I also don't want to overcomplicate some of these shapes. See how like there's now a whole bunch of different strands all in different directions. So I would rather spend time getting these poses to work nicely from every angle, and then over the top of that, like shape it. But that way it means that I'll have more control, like it'll be more predictable to get nice shape once I get into animating this in like an actual shot, like once we get it in the actual poses. So I think that's generally working a bit more. Obviously on this side, it's not, we don't want it to go too far into her hair, into her face, sorry. I'm gonna have it wrap around the front a little bit more. And then we'll use that as a base, and then I'm gonna pose the individual strands over the top of that, just to give us something a bit more appealing. Oh, I see. So these are all, I thought these were lots of joints down 3 strands, but actually these are 3 joints down a lot of strands. Which I guess to some extent is probably more conventional. To what you might see on an actual production. But I want to make it feel like it's all pinching into one shape. So it's almost like coning, if that's a good term to use. It's nice to, I think it's okay to have a little bit of like these little strands chipping off, but I don't want it to be like really wide in the silhouette. So I'd prefer it to be like little bits that taper off nearer the ends. So like seeing that little flick at the end, I think just looks more appealing and is more graphic. So again, looking at all angles. This one definitely needs to come over to the left. Feels like those tips at the front need to be lower. What I might also do is actually, because her texture is black right now, it's not doing me any favors. So I'm just going to turn, there you go. I'm going to turn the material to default. And then I can actually see what I'm doing. Maybe because these are like the bulkier shapes, I'm actually going to have this go into a little bit more of a tip here. It looks like this is all one shape as well. Okay, no, it's not. So there we go. We can make that go into a little bit more of a point. Yeah, so I don't have full control over like this strand because it's part of 2. But I think that's okay. I think that's for the most part. Okay, we got this one as well. In theory, if I get this done in a really clean way to begin with, I think that will save me time later. Trying to avoid intersections. I don't know how that's going to respond otherwise once we get to like the shaders. Keep the hair under, I reckon, in that part. And like I say, we can also translate this stuff, which is useful. And then that's that pass. What's these guys? Ah, this is the under hair as well. Pretty cool. Don't want to forget about certain parts. Then we got these strands. So these have quite a bit of influence. They're big, quite bulky shapes. But yeah, I do really like this rig. Like there is a lot of function in here. And I like that this feels like quite a high level of detail of control, but also not overwhelming at the same time. Something like that feels quite nice, the way that sweeps under. Then we got these guys. Like the little under hair parts. So this one, I could have it wrap around the front of the neck, so like that's where the breakup happens. And then this is where we're getting around to the front now. So again, we got this really nice little strand in here, which may have a bit more influence. This can like come across her face a little bit more. This one is kind of tucked under, so I think this is the only exception. Because this is like part of her like the main shape of her like design. So I don't want to change that too much. Just make sure it doesn't intersect at the roots there, the base. And then now these are the broader parts. So I do feel like they'll have a little more influence wrapping around the side of her face here. I do like that we have these like smaller, there's like a nice contrast between these like smaller strands and these larger ones. So you just get a little bit more contrast. And I also didn't feel like that took me very long to pose this out. Something like that. Feels pretty clean. These under parts here, maybe on her right side. I wonder if we need to either keep those closer, or maybe it's that this is going too wide from an appeal perspective. I wonder, I'd rather spend the time now to get these like bulkier parts working. Yeah, that feels a little better. Still feel like that can curl under. Yeah, that feels a bit better. It just felt like it was like pulling out at the back a bit too much there. Okay, I can save that now. So there's a little bit of an intersection on the front there. This is like, it's quite having to be quite vigilant at the beginning, but I think it will be worth it because it means that once we actually get into posing, it's gonna not take so much time. Cool. It's these like little spikes in here that bother me. Like I want everything to have, there you go, a bit more of a rhythm to them. So now we can go back into Studio Library. That's the reference editor, we don't need that anymore. And then let's turn the hair back on. Then let's save out a new pose. And this is her right. Is there like a random strand? What's that strand doing there? Oh. There's one strand that's just like, this is how my hair actually responds. Where are you? Come back here. This guy? There you go. This is how my hair goes. There's always that one curl that's just like trying to be a bit of a rebel. Cool. So now we want to do her left side. Let's go back to here. So this is the broader part again. It's like going across her face quite a lot there. It's going to separate more. Make sure it wraps around. But yeah, I think the weights are actually quite nice. So now I can pose from that. So we'll start off again with the broader parts. That feels a bit too straight, so I'm going to counter, just get a bit more of a curve. Feels better. Similar thing on this one. Make sure it comes to a point. And then I don't mind this one coming off a little bit more. I could go something like more bold, where this one like flaps separately from the others, like where it kind of does this kind of thing, which is kind of interesting, but maybe it's too complex. Maybe it's going to stand out if it keeps appearing. I'm a little unsure about that one. Part of me feels like I should probably just keep it graphic and not have it taper off too much. Yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that one? Always open to people's opinions. So this is the main tip of the hair. So that's where they all need to pinch into. Yeah, keep it simple for library. And then you can always add nuances later. Agreed. Glad that you also agree with what my intuition was telling me to. Yeah, this is the one part that I'm going to keep tucked behind her hair there. But then this little strand can definitely peel off. And then on the other side, we got her under hair as well. It's feeling pretty nice. Then we got the back. This needs to be pulling more. Trying to keep the layers as well. I don't want to like over stack things too much. It's a tricky balance. It's feeling pretty good. And then we got her under hair as well. And then we've got the right side. So I reckon we can add a bit of complexity maybe to this strand, because like this is the smaller part. So like having something like this feels a bit more dramatic. I like the idea of it having a bit more of like a flick to it. Yeah, something like that. And then this one's gonna, again, I don't want it to cover her eyes too much. So like I could have it complement the other one potentially. Like they come into like a shape together. That's one way of approaching it. So like this guy comes over a bit more into like something like this. What would it look like then if I did that? I like the idea of keeping it quite graphic. This is very much a like, speaking of, well, actually no. Earlier today I was speaking to somebody and I was referring to Spirit Untamed, one of the first features I worked on. And I was just like, this type of hair design kind of reminds me of that because it's like bulkier shapes. They kind of like tie together. Again, I want to try to avoid it covering her eyes too much. This is the reason we would design it. Design the hair poses. Needs to come a little bit wider now. Because it's not going to go across her face too much. Keep it stacked underneath. So this is just going to be like pressing against the mask. And then we've got the underparts as well. I believe that little... I thought that might be a hair strand. It's not, it's her ear. So I need to make sure I pose that too. Like, not pose the ear, I'm just going to move the hair. So it doesn't clip. Something like this. Feels pretty nice. I'm hoping, in theory, once I get into shading, because there are quite a few strands in here, I want to kind of shade it in a way that there's not tons of line work. I want it to be more like black color with a bit of that like anime like sheen, like a little squiggly sheen across the top. You'll see like my reference for that, I can quickly bring it up, is things like Faye from Cowboy Bebop, if anyone's familiar with that show. Faye, Cowboy Bebop. So her hair is also going to be the same color. Like there's going to be kind of a reference to her in here as well. Here we go. This is the kind of like hair shading reference I'm trying to go for, where it's going to be quite flat. There'll be some, hopefully, again, I don't know how well I'm going to achieve this, but you can see like there are these little strands that kind of like taper off, but her overall shape is very graphic. So I want to try, it's obviously not the same shape, but she does kind of have like, she has the headband, right? But aside from that, she has these like long, quite short hair that like tapers near the tips. So there is some language that's similar, but I do love this like pointed, almost like triangular shapes that we get nearer the ends, which we don't have in ours. It's just a slight different design, but this is the kind of reference I'm trying to go for with her hair. So you can see there is like a main outline, and there's like a couple of like shaded darker regions which have an outline as well, but like then you just get this clean like graphic shape squiggles to define lighting. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to go for. How well I'll achieve that, I don't know. There's definitely going to be a lot of experimentation during the shading phase, but for now, this is just so you can see, you can kind of understand my intention. Because when we look at it like this now, this is going to kind of dictate a lot of how it's going to look, like in terms of like silhouettes, and I can see that this is actually getting too complex. So I do want to kind of fix up some of this stuff. It might actually be a case where I take that strand and just turn it into one rather than two. So I've got to find it. I think it's this one of these. This one? Yeah. Let's take this and just pull it closer. So it's almost like, oh, it's wrapping off. Try and simplify it as much as we can. So now when I look at the silhouette, that already looks better. There's a bit of like a gap in there, so I need to clean that up. All these little things will save us time later, so I'd rather do it now. Yeah, I think that looks quite clean. Maybe there's this little tip in here is annoying me. Where is it? Not that one. Not that one. No. No. Come on. Which one are you? Where have you gone? Is it the yellow? No. Is it the undercut? Yeah, it's the undercut. I just wanted these to flow into each other a bit more. Something like this. So we can pull it again. I think just keeping it front on is okay for now. So we'll call that left. I think the bottom one is basically neutral, so I'm not too worried about that, but I want to do back and top as well. And front. Back, top, back, top and front are the other three I need to do. So let's put it back into neutral. For professionals who maybe have a bit more confidence, I'm surprised more people don't utilize things like Twitch when they're doing personal work. I think there's also like for most people, of course, they're gonna want the reason they're even doing it to begin with is because they're trying to create a piece for like a portfolio, which for that reason you don't want to like show the work in progress, because then it makes it potentially look less impressive. Like some people might worry about that as well. So for that reason, people may want to like wait until it's fully in its like full glory kind of thing, when it's all polished and refined, before they show it to anyone, which I do get that as well. And I definitely used to have that mindset too, but now this for me is less so of like a resume piece, and it's much more like a passion project that I don't mind sharing with people. So I'm kind of happy to like expose my flaws, show the process, see where you might think I'm going wrong, where you're learning from stuff, and yeah, just take it piece by piece really. So you can see that's all pulling into one part now. By default, it's not by default. I can't flip between neutral and it's fine. I just wanted to see whether that piece was going under or over. It most likely is going under, because it looks like every other piece is layering under. So I'm just going to keep it like that. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I quite like this idea that this is kind of like flowing into this shape here as well. That's quite nice. Maybe I can tuck this one under quite a lot, so then we get this kind of drifting shape as well. I just need to get this guy. No, where is it? This one? Yeah. I want to peel this under more. So we're getting this like feeling of like a slight S shape under here. Just gotta find the right controls. Yeah, this one. I really wish that wasn't two pieces. I'm just gonna have to compensate and tuck it up under a lot more. And then we have this guy. I really, honestly, because I haven't really worked with her hair much. I did it on one other piece that I posted not long ago for Agora. But otherwise, I haven't worked with this rig enough to like really fully process how the hair functions. But I do love this like global 3 controls that like say left, right, and back, and then you have the micros underneath. That's like a really nice workflow. That's already flowing quite nicely. There's a bit of a gap. I think it's one of the yellows. Yeah, this guy. Fill in that space there. We got these ones. I think we're going too wide. So typical. I'm looking down at my dog. She's laying beside me, and we went out this afternoon, and I was like, because I'm gonna stream, I don't want her to feel like neglected, so I'll keep her occupied. I bought her a treat, and she's just sitting there staring at it like, what do you want me to do with this? I'm like, really? Come on, I just spent money on you. Not that I don't spend enough on her already. And she's just sitting there like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, this isn't not up to my standards. Curling those pieces in. This one looks like it is tucking under. Maybe I'm just going to keep those two as they are. I can always have it pull back slightly, but I don't want to reveal too much of her forehead. because it just won't look as appealing. So I'm probably going to keep that as it is, but that's feeling pretty nice. So I'll do this from a profile. Pull it back. I'm really curious to see how it's going to blend as well. If I try and incorporate two of these poses together, that's like the next stage as well. So now we need to do front, and then we got top. So it's going to slightly taper in front of her face. These guys are just going to tuck into her neck. They'll probably go around her neck a little bit. But you'll see what I'm going to do. I'm not going to have it cover her face too much. So these guys need slightly... They're going to tuck to her neck. So as they're coming around, maybe I just do the back first. Get that out of the way. So it's going to split off either side. Do I have that go around this side? Yeah, I think so. And then these guys are going to peel off. Something like this. Then we can do the back pieces. It's already feeling quite nice. Just start at the back and work our way forward. I feel like that's too much influence. I wanted to have like a progressive influence. So these can still be tapering in. And then we're going to have it like start to funnel. Going to keep these pieces tucked back because that's her hair. I don't mind this little fringe piece kind of like flicking out. Just gotta be careful of it skinning. I wonder. Something like that. There was one piece in here, like this clump. I've got to find wherever that clump is. Oh, it's this guy. Yeah, it's the undercut. So I feel like some of these shapes definitely need to complement each other a bit more. The side view. That looks a bit better. There's a bit of a curl in there. A little S shape going through. And then the undercut needs to kind of flow with that a bit more. That's the back piece. It's feeling quite nice. And then yeah, I think that undercut piece still needs to like just flow under. Yeah, something like this. And then into the right side. So this is kind of going behind her ear. Let's have that curl forward. This guy can be a little bit more of a stray. Do I have that go against the tide? Nah. It can like peel off a little bit more, I reckon. And again, we'll funnel it forward a little bit more. Something like that. These pieces can definitely start to have a bit more contrast, I reckon. Hey, she's finally starting to play with her tree. She's decided to stop being stubborn. And then we've got her final fringe piece in here. So I have that just complement under like the other one. Kind of nice. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So again, we'll put it to the side. Yeah, that looks quite nice actually. I like the flow of it. Maybe we can just take that, curl it under a bit more. Yeah, that's pretty cool. New pose, cool this front. And then save, put it back into neutral. Then we need to do the last one, which is top. So when she's upside down. Which is going to be a tricky one because we're going to expose a lot of her side, which is why I wanted to make sure I got the mask fitting quite nicely. I think it does the job. I want to avoid showing too much of her side, so this is going to be really tricky. Because naturally, when we pull, would you see like the full sides of her fringe? Like we get these underparts, so maybe we keep the underparts behind her ears. That kind of keeps, again, excellent modeling from the whoever modeled it for the rig. Maybe we do have these parts go this as well, so the undercut's going to come in handy. Maybe these outer parts it's actually okay to go a bit crazy with. And then we'll have some influence. Yeah, you see how that part there is now like exposing a bit too much to the side. So I'm going to keep the parts under her hair. I'll just pose that back. That's not an issue. Yeah, this one's going to be a little bit fiddlier, I reckon. But it's important we do it. So should we do the back first because it's bulkier, there are less parts. Again, want it to kind of go into a pinch. almost like like people think of the trolls, where it's like a little wisp near the top. It's quite a broad piece here. Something like that. Now let's keep her undercut. I'm going to counter it back slightly. It's going to be tricky. I wonder if it's worth just keeping it down. What do you guys think? Do you think it's worth just kind of like having it wrap under so that she doesn't look bald? I think it's probably worth it, right? We want to suggest that there's layers of hair. Yeah, just for appeal. Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. It's like these undercut parts here. It's going to rely on me being able to actually pose it in a nice way, though. Something like that. So this is, I'm essentially counter posing here for anyone who's never really done something like this before. Because we had so much influence over the broader controls, I'm now having to counter pose these controls back into position. There are techniques you can use, like copying world space and that kind of stuff, to maybe get those results, but I don't know how it responds, so I'm just doing it manually so I can actually like construct some of the shapes a bit more. Now she looks like she's just got like some weird lack of sideburns, like she's bald on top, which is quite funny. So obviously we're gonna have to bring back in on her left side that fringy part. Tuck it behind her ear. She's turning into one of those stereotypical like middle-aged men, corporate people that she's actually trying to like, well, actually it goes in the show, she works for a corporation. If we're gonna go into like nerdy lore. So I'm trying to keep like the broad structure of her hair and then peel into it after. So that way we're kind of keeping some of her like coat, the main base coat of her hair intact. But these little parts can definitely peel off quite a lot, because these are like the flimsy parts. The hard part is going to be tweening between some of these ones. Like that's definitely going to be tricky. Some of the breakdowns, so we're going to again have to be quite sharp, I reckon, with some of it. We'll see. I could be biting off more than I can chew here, but we'll figure it out. So I'm definitely utilizing a bit more translation. Try and get some of these shapes working. That does feel quite sharp, but Don't know how else to kind of counter it, unless I just bring it wider and then rotate in. But again, the rotation is kind of what makes it feel yeah, I want to keep the curve. Maybe this will be okay. Can I counter? Yeah, do something like this. Then bring it up. Which means I can bring that up too. I don't want to... Yeah, I'm starting to break the mesh a bit too much, potentially. Yeah, you can see where it's starting to, like, double in on itself. Gotta be careful with that stuff. Even just pulling like that might be enough. It's quite tight. It's quite a sharp bend, but... What are you gonna do? Cheers, I appreciate it. So I'm countering back and translating. Get a bit more of an S heal in. And then I might need to do the same to this layer too, on the back now. I know we already posed it before, but looking at it now in hindsight, I think we need to keep it a little bit closer to what I'm doing with the other stuff. Trying to keep it kind of like clumped in together. Try and treat it like individual, like one piece rather than individual, because then it gets too complex. Because again, I don't know what the angles are going to be. The more I can kind of keep them together, I feel like it will benefit me later. Kind of like what we were doing with the other parts. Something like that. Yeah, as you can see, this is much more labor intensive than the other poses we did. Just when I thought it was getting easier. Who said Maya didn't like to throw a curveball every now and then? So now we're starting to peel a little bit more to the right in the split. Big clump on this one. Yeah, it seems like the tip is doing a lot of the work. Maybe this is going to feel like too hard-edged. That's the other thing that looks a bit weird, maybe. The top of it, like the silhouette in the top looks nice, but this is maybe feeling a bit too hard. So I may end up having to like soften that a little bit, which again, I'll play around with it once I've got a pass working. Yeah, these are some very bulky parts. The right side definitely has more hair. So many pieces. So like these little wispy parts we can definitely like exaggerate a bit more. I can already feel my wrist going. It's so much like twist, click, twist, click, twist, click. Did I already do that piece? No, I didn't. It's almost like I need to, yeah, like translate the base in. And that's given us a bit, yeah, that looks way better deformations wise. Maybe that's the strat. So it's taking that main base control and just tucking it in. I mean, these ones are smaller, so like, it's not as destructive. I'm going to keep this a bit more graphic, I reckon. So I'm going to keep it lower so it ties into that clump there a bit more. It's okay, it splits up at the ends, but you want to keep the base of it a bit more together. It's not awful, it's just like there's a lot of skinning. That's getting a bit clumpy there. Is that a custom picker? Yes, it is. Yeah, I've built this. Just Dreamwall picker is the tool, but I've built the picker myself, yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Maybe the tips at the back of her hair can be dragging as well, so they aren't completely glued to the back. Yeah, that's true. It's like these guys, you want more like this. The only difficulty is like it reveals quite a lot of the back of her hair by doing that. There's just not enough controls really. But yeah, I do know what you mean. It kind of looks like she's wearing a pine cone on her head, which isn't ideal. I wonder if there's a way again, maybe I can counter it by translating in and then rotating out so that there's a bit more of a softer influence. I mean, does that work for you? Obviously, I know what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna make this a lot softer, but I have a plan for that. But maybe this is more in line with what you were thinking. I'm not sure. Because yeah, when I'm rotating it up, I'm gonna have to counter it back out again. There's a lot of like translations involved to get the curves working. They're not too sharp. Kind of gross. It's more I was picturing, but the rig seems to be limiting the area. Yeah, for sure. It is a bit rough in it. What do you think? Do you think it's better to keep it tied to the back of her hair or to have them flicking up with the limitations we have? I think actually this might work. I think probably keeping it peeled out might be better. And then, yeah, you think it works better flicking them up. Yeah, I think I agree with you. So now I've got to take these crazy guys, which I've maybe gone a bit too far with them. For whatever reason, it wasn't letting me select them all. I'm just going to try blending them back so that I have some, like, neutral ground. I don't know how else it's going to work because they are influenced by, like, these bigger ones, but I'm going to try it. So we have the neutral, right? So I'm going to take our neutral. Just going to blend it back a bit. I mean, already you can see it's taking a bit more of the influence off. They're now rounded. They're a bit more rounder, which is nice. So now we've got a bit more of that structure coming back in. Now I'm going to take the bases, try pulling them down so that they fill in a bit more of the gaps. Because I don't want to see that bald patch in between. That's the big concern, right? So it may end up being a case of like countering back slightly. So maybe it's the tips that do most of the peeling, and it's less of like the bases. Like that's the idea. So that we do more influence in this part. Yeah, that looks way cleaner. Looks less like a mushroom. Mushroom's probably not even the thing I'm thinking of, but you get the idea. Hopefully, I'm not just going crazy. There's like the fringe piece, whatever part's the fringe. Do we even have that fringe control? We don't even have it, do we? Is there a control for it? Maybe I didn't add it. It's fine. I can just pull it down and on these parts. My focus is getting a bit broken there. There we go. I'm hoping that there are lots of cases where she's upside down, but she's not upside down for a long time. Well, I say that. I'm now thinking there's one specific beat near the end, isn't there, where she's upside down for quite a long time. But I guess we'll get to that when we get to it. We'll tackle that when it comes. Now it's the back pieces. So these guys, we're going to point them down. I'm just going to curl these up. Yeah, I think this is looking better. And then we can have them still cone into like a nicer shape. On. Yeah, I was wondering why it stopped. Slightly froze on me there. Just saving it before it crashes. Something like that. This is probably gonna look. I'm almost like it's part concern, part like I can just see it coming, where I'm gonna get to like actually putting this onto the shot, and I'm gonna be like, what on earth does that pose look like? It looks ridiculous. But it's gotta be done. Like, we can't have her hair not moving when it goes upside down. We just may end up having to cheat it a lot, potentially. I think that back piece just needs to curl a bit more this way. I'm really hoping it works though. I'm going to keep that one under. Again, keep it tucked to her hair as though it's like tucked under her ear. The little wisp is fine to come off though. Okay, that's what we're going for upside down, which might look ridiculous, might not. When I put it in like 6, it might actually be okay though. Like, it simplifies some of the shapes, but it is also still quite complex. So yeah, I guess we'll see. There's like a bit going through her ear. Let me just see if I can fix that. But yeah, slight concern there, but we'll work with it for now and then see how ridiculous it looks within context once we get into posing. Maybe I'll just try and simplify. But it gives us something to build from. Let's call this up. Okay, I think we've got all our poses now, right? We've got back, front, left, right, up, and down. Yeah, we've got all our hair poses. Sweet. So now, let me save that. Use really strong gel. Yeah, exactly. It'll go left and right, guys, but it never goes up. It's a new technology where your hair will never stick up. Okay, so now we need to do her jacket, which I'm really hoping, like, it has a lot of control. Again, similar kind of situation. We have like broad strokes kind of deal, which I'm gonna have to translate, and then we're gonna, like, we've got a lot of these little ones over the top, but I don't think we're going to be using them too much in theory. And then we've also got the front here, her little jacket pieces, which again, not going to be using those too much. And it goes up to the back here. It's mostly going to be the longer strands in this part. The only thing that I'm worried about, if I move those two together, yeah, the center is staying intact. Like, that's almost a separate piece, which is kind of awkward. So, like, when I rotate them, I can translate kind of together, but it's really awkward. Like, that centerpiece is the only part I don't like. But I do wonder if I'm missing a control, so I'm just going to actually go into the control switch. Let me just see if I were to turn on her jacket. Is it cloth? Yeah, it's doing something. I want to see. She's taking a second, it's frozen. There we go. So, like, if I look at her broader pieces, so we have this, like, red control, which is the wider part. And then we have this one as well, this guy. But there's not one for the center. You see? It's only in that back piece, which is an FK joint. Which is kind of awkward. But we'll make do. Like, we can pose it. It's just a bit more fiddly. So I'm going to turn off the jacket controls again, because I don't need to select them. And then we're gonna do front front, back, left, right side. Same ordeal. So we have 6 poses. So we have our neutral, which is already done for us, which is great. So let's go into the studio library. Let's just do a 3/4 jacket pose. Let's call this neutral. Then we want to do, let's do left and right. So this is going to be translation based. Jobs are good and we're finished. I'm kidding. We're not far off though, honestly. Some of the influence in here is a little awkward, so I want to try and clean up some of that stuff. Either that or we make it more like an S that comes through, which could be interesting. So it's like this part. Is that the front? Yeah, that's the front. So we're looking in this kind of territory. What if I just give it more like an S ripple going through there? Just gonna try and distribute the stretch a bit more so that the eye doesn't warp too much. There we go. Cool. So we have that. In theory, I wonder if I mirror that. If I were to use a mirror tool, would it literally just give me the other side? Because this has the same rig setup on either side, whereas the other one was asymmetrical. So it wouldn't have worked as well. But this might actually work for mirroring. So this is her right side. Let me do a flip. Boom. Left side complete. So then we need to do front and back. They're going to be slightly different. So luckily, front's going to be quite easy for that centerpiece. We can just tuck it into the body a bit more. And then these guys are going to come forward. Let's pull it up a bit more. So it's mostly going to be in these front joints. We want to pull these out. These are FK? Yeah, these are FK. Bad. Don't think it needs a lot. Just distributing the joints up together. I think that works. Again, we're not looking for like a ton of stuff here. We're just looking for like contact. The other thing to keep in mind though, when I'm doing these poses, look, if I change the spine, see how it goes through her body here. So there's definitely going to be some like intersection cleanup, which I'm going to have to do on a case-by-case scenario. But for her like straight up pose, we at least have some base to work from. That's the only issue of using FK. There are ways around it. There are different tools you can use, but I don't think I'm because we're working in the, if we were doing a spline, I would use a different workflow. I would probably use another tool which basically turns these joints into IK world space, so that I can control how they intersect. It's a lot easier to pull them around in translation and stuff. But we don't need to use that for this because the style is actually quite simple. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm just going to work on, yeah, make it work as and when we need to. So this guy just needs to match. And then I just need to tweak the influence of the jacket out a bit more. Maybe it does tuck in a little bit more to the body. Yeah, something like that. So then I can take these joints and just mirror them. It should fix on the other side. Yeah. Something like that. So that's our back. And then we need to do top, which is the tricky one. Now, when she's going upside down here, I'm not going to do like the inverted flap. I think that's too much. I'm actually going to go for something more simple, which is that it bunches up. So it's going to almost feel like a squash and stretch. I think that's the smarter direction to go with this one. So, in other words, I am going to translate this up. And then I'm going to pull them in. But then it's going to bunch out. Even something like that as it is isn't too bad. Maybe it's getting a little bit weirdly compressed near the insides. I mean, object space. It's not quite working. Okay, I'm going to have to do it manually. I just don't want it to be like pinching near her armpits as much. That's what it was. It's fine, I can counter it. It's okay if it has a little bit of bunching, but I don't want it to be as drastic as it currently is. Something like that. And mirror. There you go. It's just softened out that pinching near the tops there. And then I can do collar poses as well if we want to have them go straight and stuff, but I don't know if we need it, honestly. I think that's maybe too much detail. So then this is up. Amazing. So, in theory, we have all the poses we need to start layering in secondary action. As to how well it's going to work, who knows? So I've now got the entire pose. I can delete all of that. We can go back to where we started. And we can start to pose out her jacket. Got a question here. Do I pose every piece of cloth and hair first? I always get overwhelmed when I animate many strands of hair, for example. So I just want to animate them one by one. I try and animate them pose to pose. So similar to what we just did there, it was basically like one collective pose rather than doing it one by one. I think you get maybe a more organic feeling if you do it one by one, because then you're getting like natural flapping and there's a bit more chaos, which maybe is a bit more realistic. Like if you were to watch live action, you see like wind blowing in someone's hair and they have a lot of hair. Obviously, it's going to go all over their face, right? And it's a bit chaotic. But for a piece like this, where it's more stylistic and graphic, I prefer to pose it all together and treat it more like a singular shape. That if you want to add in like detail or like little extra chaos into it afterwards, you can, but to give it like to get the broad strokes working, I try to keep it simple and treat it more like everything is collectively one pose together. I do want to have my perspective view because I no doubt I'm going to need that as I'm going through the shot. So first of all, let's just start her in her neutral pose. I have a feeling I've maybe posed this. Yeah, I've already started to pose it, but it was quite broken. So let's put it in her neutral pose. And then it needs to be slightly forward here. So I'm going to blend it forward. And then it looks like it needs to be a little bit more curled. So again, like, I knew that like there's going to be a case where we are going to need to like slightly tweak things just to get the poses we need. But once we get the pose, we can just key into it. And this is like one that we're staying on for quite a long time. So I don't want to neglect it. Okay, so we're starting in that pose. Which is over here. So this is what it looks like from camera. I do wonder if it needs to be pulled out a bit more. It's tricky. I'm not liking this shape in here. It has like some little dinks in it that we don't want. And for whatever reason, we're not even seeing the other side, so I need to cheat that down. So maybe I just need to cheat it to camera a little bit more. Like, it's pretty, there you go, it's clipping through her body here. I'd rather just get the shape working to camera, honestly. So I'm just going to snap these positions at the beginning. So this is all the same, this is all the same. Looks like we are compressing, so I need to get a little bit more of the... Just trying to like compensate for intersections. So now I'm just going to tween into that a little bit. Definitely getting some breaking on the jacket through there. Because I'm really cheating the shoulder round. See, the shoulder's like super exaggerated there. So like, I'm definitely going to need to tweak her jacket. I might even just cheat by hiding it completely through there. Or can I bring it around? Maybe I can get away with, yeah, just suggesting it inside. Now, before we start to transition, Yeah, it's Animbot. That's the big taskbar at the bottom, the big toolbar. Yeah, thank you for answering in the chat. I appreciate it. Now as we come up, this is our next pose, right? So I want to, because we're revealing more of her jacket now, and hopefully the shoulder's not as broken. Let's put on her neutral. Then I'm going to blend in a little bit of the front. Maybe a tiny bit to the right. Now you'll see why. Because I actually do want there to be like a little bit of flapping in the wind. I want to sell the idea in a very subtle way that her jacket is actually like being affected by being so high up. So I'm just tweening between this, trying to find my shapes. Maybe I have this piece a little bit further along. So now we're turning around, so we're getting a bit of the drag in here. This is a tricky one. I feel like I'm gonna have to blend a little bit. So I'm just starting to blend through. Because the other tricky part is I don't really want it to feel like it's the whole piece that's flapping too much. It's more like the ends of it. It's like you almost need to do this kind of thing, but we're countering it, and then it's like these ends are coming out. But then I don't know if the rig's really built to be that flexible. Because then this guy needs to wrap around the body a bit more. Something like that. I think that looks a bit better. And then I just need to tween some of this. It's because she turns her body. I think that works a little better. I'm gonna add in some like intricacies later. But I just want to get the broader pose working first. Yeah, Animbot is honestly great. It seems like there are some alternatives coming out now. Like there's a few people that have obviously seen the success of how Animbot was, and they're like, I want to do my own my own take on it. Yeah, which is cool. So I noticed in here it looks like I've got some keys missing, so I'm going to take whatever the root is doing, wherever there's a key there. I need to share that throughout the rest of the shot. So let me just save this before something breaks. And I'm going to use Animbot's share keys tool. So it's going through the entire timeline, all these red lines, and it's copied where the keys are being placed. And I'm going to do the same, but paste that onto all the controls on the jacket. So now when I do share keys and paste it, you'll notice all these keys are going to go red. They're going to match what wherever I've placed a key on the route. It's going to take a second. So I think what happened is at some point down the line, I was using, my keys were getting very dense and the rig was getting very slow. So I used Animbot's Simplify Keys tool, which basically said wherever there's no animation, but you are inserting keys, we're going to remove the keys. Because I think the key density was making the scene slow, which this might do it now. You can see I've added all these keys back in on all those controls. It could be very dense. At the end of the day, it needs to happen. But on the earlier parts of the process, it was quite horrible to work with. So it seems to be responding okay for now. We'll see how it goes. But you can see here now we have a different pose. So I need to create, let's narrow the timeline back down again. Where are we? Around there. So we have around here. I can turn off the audio. You see the keys a bit better. Animbot can be expensive. I use Eco, which is £3 a month. So I don't know. It depends. It depends what you want to do. Like, I use Eco. It means I don't have all controls. Like, I don't have all of the functionality. Like, some of the temp controls in here, I don't have all of that stuff. You have basic temp controls, but then you don't have, like, temporary aim constraints and that kind of stuff, which is useful, but not like a game change. Like, you know, it's not like a deal breaker. Like, I can still use all the main sliders, which, as you can see, I've used Animbot for, like, the majority of this shot so far, and I've got most of what I needed from it. So it's not that you can't animate with it without it. It just helps you. So I think £3 a month for me is worth it. But I understand it's not everyone can afford that stuff. So I'm putting it back, and I'm going to blend in the right as well. So this is actually one of the great tools. We can use additive as well. So there you go. So now we get this shape, which looks way better. Additive basically applies the values of the pose in the library on top of existing animation, which is really useful. Now I can place that key. This is the only part of the shot really and the bit at the end when she's walking, where we're going to see like a singular pose for a long period of time. But now when I blend with this, you can see we're getting some cleaner shapes. I just need to make sure that during that transition, the right side there, we're not intersecting too much as it comes around, tucks behind. Like that. Yeah, it is worth the money, honestly. There are tools out there, comparable ones that are free, that's true. Even Animbot itself has its own one called A-Tools, which is how the rig started, like how the tool started, sorry. And A-Tools I still feel like you can access, and it has a lot of these tools as well. Like it has all the sliders for the most part, and there's only a couple that are missing. But I used A-Tools for the longest time before Animbot even existed. So yeah, it's still a viable option. Hey Scary, great to see you in here. So now we've got that pose for her jacket. Just make sure all of this is the same. So the hair will also be flapping here, but I wanted to keep it quite subtle. I want it to feel like she's really high up. That's the main selling point. Cool. So now that whole section, we have at least the pose. I'm going to go in and over the top later and add the flapping stuff, but for now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But I have an idea of how I might want to do that. Let me just save that. We've just been asked a question here. Is the jacket going to move in different frame rates to the rest of the body? That is like a technique that they used on Spider-Verse, across the Spider-Verse, for Hobie. So like his guitar, like that he always had over his shoulder, was a different frame rate to his body, and his jacket was a different frame rate to both those things as well. And it kind of made it feel more like a collage-y comic book thing. I guess more like a collage because you're like sticking things on top of each other. So it felt like you were taking that piece, you're moving it a little bit, and then you take that piece and you move it a little bit, almost like a South Park kind of like tactile feel. But that's not the direction I want to go with this. This is more like treating it as though it was cell animated. So in other words, how they do anime even to this day, like not on paper, but they still use traditional, right? Sorry, they use digital, but the execution is the same. The result. So everything moves on the same frame rates, in other words. It's a valid question, but that's not the direction I want to take it. So it's coming down. So it's actually quite nice. We're already kind of getting the drag just by keeping it in parent space, and then we're getting some follow through. Now, I can just begin to ease out the follow through. I can kind of like take this pose and we can just blend it back to neutral, and it will give us a little bit of that follow through. I can always blend in the front. So if we go to front here, I blend that in. See how we're going to get a little bit of that follow through on the jacket now. But then she is going to pull away again. So I want to keep this quite straight and neutral through here. And then it does pop up to get this pose, which we already posed earlier. So like this is the only time we actually pose the jacket. And then in here, we're going to go into our bunched pose, which is this one. Oh, that didn't work as nicely as I thought it would. For whatever reason. I wonder why. It's almost like there's too much influence. Maybe it's to do with the shoulders. Maybe the shoulders influence skinning. Why does it feel like it's not bunching correctly? That's really odd. So it looks different to how we did it before. I don't have like a mirror turned on or something. No. From selection. I did left. See, that works okay. Up. Up doesn't have influence. Did I select the wrong? I know what happened. Oh no. I've got to repose up. Because, for whatever reason, I didn't select all the controls when I created that thumbnail. Like when I created I must have had only like these selected, so that's why that's not changing and the others are. So like if let me just confirm that. So if I go back in here, I go to neutral. If I select up, does it select all the controls? Oh, it does. They are moving, right? Yeah, no, they are moving. Just not in the way I'd like it to. Well, can I just do something like this? Yeah, it's fine. I can deal with this. Still, a lot of the controls are there. It's just not exactly what I intended. It's like some weird pinching going on. Something like that. So now I can tween into that pose. So you can see we're getting a bit of the drag. I can start to blend in a bit of the front as well. So let's bring that back up. Where's our front here? Let's blend this in. It's because we're also like stretching the limbs. That's partly to do with it. And then here, I can always have it flat down and maybe a little bit to the left, just to get the follow through. So we're going to go neutral, a little bit forward, and a little bit to our left. I think it's going to resolve, yeah, back to neutral pretty quickly here. On rig, I'm getting this like delay in the way it's calculating. Why do I still have rotations on this if I just set it back to neutral? All of it has value on it. That's so strange. I set you back to neutral. Oh, it's because I'm on additive. There we go. Going slightly loopy. You see how it's not really sticking to her body here? You know why? That's because we are using the spine bending, which is what I was trying to describe earlier. So there's gonna have to be a bit of like countering sometimes for that stuff, just to kind of keep it wrapped to her body. So then back. So then we're gonna start turning in a second. So here we need to pull it back. See, you can already see a lot of the benefits of doing it this way though. Like I already have these broader poses, so if I want to correct, I can just pull it back and I've already fixed that intersection. So then as we're coming through, it feels like we're just kind of just pulling. Maybe you can go a little bit to the front. And then here, oops, what happened there? Oh, it's a search bar. This we need to go a bit more to her left, her right. Yeah, so we're starting to drag. Still to her right. Still to her right. Still to her right. And then as we're starting to drop, I'm going to keep it going to the right, but we're also going to layer in on top some of the bunching. So We're getting a little bit of that compression going up. So yeah, it's starting to break a little bit. That feels good. And then we're gonna start to hold it there. Then it needs to come to her left. Same thing through here. More to her left. Might also be a bit back on the pose before. So we get a bit more drag. That. See that follow through there? So we're still dragging to the left here. It may also be a little bit to the front as well. Yeah, I'm gonna have to shape this one, it looks like. Slightly scared me, but I appreciate it, thank you. I wasn't expecting the loud sound, it just came out of nowhere. So I'm slightly pulling this to her body. And then it's going to be quite neutral here, I reckon. And then it needs to be slightly to the left, just the intersections in there. Oh, wait, can I dock it? I just saw a dock. I can dock it. Why did I not know this? This saves me so much time trying to isolate everything. God damn it. Why didn't I know about that before? I can also make these smaller. Can I stack them? Oh, it doesn't stack. There must be a way to rearrange. Label over item? No. Order spacing? No. Hide label. Ha! This is what I want. Yes. There we go. That's way more functional. So we're coming through, going to continue to ease out. I could get it stretching a little bit in here. So this is almost, the one thing we didn't do is a down, like a stretch down, but I can just translate this stuff. Want to get a bit tighter to her body. And then here, it does need to peel back into the left a bit. So we want her left side here. And we want a little bit to the back. Then again, this is more on her left side. That already looks pretty nice. I might get a little bit more in the left. I think I need to, I want to get more influence on like the tip of the jacket. Yeah, something like that. And then this is just going to ease into the neutral. But again, I'm keeping it quite tight. Then coming up. This is all quite straight through here, so I don't really want to change too much. We can always get a little bit of like bounce. So we're getting a little bit of like a volume stretch in here. Eases out. And then here, this is where it's going to bunch up. One pose that isn't quite working, but I'm going to have to correct each time, unfortunately. But that kind of works. So now I'm easing into the bunch. A little bit of an intersection on the leg there. You see that little puff up on the jacket? So we're going to hold that pose. And as we're sliding down, we almost want to preserve it a bit more. And then as we're dragging down, here it needs to come forward. I'm so used to having to like reopen the window now. I forget it's docked even though I'm just looking just to my right. Forward here. Then it's going to straighten out. You can already see we're already like near the 400 frame mark. Which is pretty good going. Yeah, the jacket looks like it's intersecting there. Just need to cheat that out of the way. So we're actually taking out, I think we're out of frame here. Yeah, slightly. But then as we begin to come out the other side, I definitely want to see that jacket dragging. Which is feeling good. So then I want to ease into this. So we're coming through here. I want to ease in because we're starting to drag and follow through. So I can go into the graph editor here. There's a lot of keys. You can see there's so many keys that we still need to do. But we've done anywhere there's like dips. We've basically done this section already. Which is pretty good, right? When you look at the whole shot. So we've done like, if I look at the whole of it, we've done nearly a quarter. Not bad. But if I were to go here, I can see where I have that dip, right? So I need to take these keys and they're going to ease in. Almost halfway. I wish it was halfway. Not quite halfway. But you can see there, we're starting to ease into that drag now. I can almost overshoot the drag. Come on, overshoot please. Did I accidentally press the wrong key? Yeah, I did. It's fine. So we're coming through. Now we overshoot. Continue to overshoot. We can really drag this. Then we're following through. Still want to get a bit. I don't want it to be like crazy, but I do want to feel the jacket. So like, I do want to involve it a little bit more here. And then it can like drag and follow through into these parts. And then here, it would probably drag as well. And then it's actually going to go to her left as well in here. So it's following through a little bit to her left. Going to continue sticking to her left. Looks like it actually needs to go beyond slightly. here. It's not like wrapping to her body enough. So I'm just going to take these and I'm just pulling them out more. Looks like it needs to be a bit more dragging back as well. Yeah, that feels better. Then it's following through. It's going to go more to her right. Stay to her right. Then it starts to straighten out. As we drop, needs to go a bit further back. This is why we create libraries, guys, in the industry. For anyone who's not in it, this is the benefit of building a good library. Libraries get neglected too often, in my opinion, and they need to be built like if you were to spend a week or two at the beginning of a product, even if you're in a production, to be honest, having the time to just like actually build a good library is going to save so much time in the long run. So I'm exaggerating this quite a lot now, because this is more in the feeling than it is the logic of it too much. So that needs to be neutral here. I'm going to have it go neutral, but then maybe it tucks in on itself. Where's my neutral here? So it starts out easing into a neutral. Then here, I'm going to have it start bunching in on itself again. Every time I use that bunching up, I wonder, because it's a consistent problem, I don't need to replace the thumbnail, I just need to replace the pose. It just needs to pull out more. So now if I select those controls and then I go onto the up and then I right click, edit, overwrite, save. Now it should be corrected. It doesn't look like it's fully... I didn't fix it properly. Somewhere there. That feels more correct. Overwrite, save. So now, there you go. Now we're feeling that compression. I can just have it slightly begin to drag back. And then I'm going to go into neutral and then blend. Well, I don't even need to. I can just turn off additive and blend into that. It might, yeah, it just stretches the jacket a little bit more there. Just want to blend into neutral a little bit more there. And then it's dragging again. But you can see how much that secondary action really brings to the shot. And then I'm going to have it go a little bit to the left. Yeah, it's a little bit back into the left, it looks like. Let's just put additive. There you go. So you can see the difference. If I turn off additive, it just blends to the direct pose. So it's more toward camera based on this angle. But if I do additive, it applies it on top of the existing pose. Now it's more to actual camera. And then I can have that ease in. But then as we're twisting, it does come back in on itself. So now we need to reapply left a bit more. So we can blend in and out of that. Then it's going to come in. Oh, is it because we're coming up? Yeah, okay. So coming through, this needs to come back. And a little bit to her right. Might overshoot slightly. And then a bit of the right in there. There might just be something to do with the twist. It's not quite, there you go. It just wasn't quite hitting the shape I was looking for. But I do want this to overshoot. Like this. Come on. It's being a bit slow now. Still dragging, still dragging. Now I'm going to start to ease in. It'll probably overshoot here, so it comes slightly forward. Overshoot. Not a great shape. That feels a bit better. And then we're going to start blending back into the back. Oh yeah, the additive is turned on. That's kind of gross. There we go. That does not look... Oh. There we go. That's the pose I was looking for. It's coming back. Sorry, it's being very slow. I better save it before I break something. And then it's going to go to her left. As we're dragging. Now this is where it's going to start to follow through and come back. Slightly overshoot. Continue to overshoot. Continue to overshoot. Then it's going to ease out. And then we're going to hit into the front pose. And it looks like a little bit of her left as well because we're tilting. Nope. Additive left. Something like that. There's something in this that doesn't quite, it's just the angle. I think it needs to be a bit cleaner. It's this side. Something like that. You can see before and after. Now when I ease into that, it's just much more clean. So then we're starting to drag back here. Ah, this is an interesting one. So now we're also going to her left over the top of it. Left, right? I thought it was her left. Apparently it's her right. Am I selecting the wrong one? Yeah, it was. So then we're dragging to her right now. Then it's coming through. We're going to overshoot to her left. Now, I'm going to keep this pose. But I do want to see that shape a bit more on her jacket. Her left side jacket. Whoa, sorry, it's very delayed, so like I can't always see exactly what I'm doing. It's getting quite heavy. I want to see if I want to feel a bit more of the jacket weight there. Still dragging, still dragging. Then it's going to go back into a more neutral. Sorry, there's a lot of detail that I'm struggling to see because it was getting too small. And then this one we're in the bunch up pose. Still bunching up. You can build a follow through, but it's going to be a little bit forward here. Still forward. Now we're starting to turn a little bit back and to her left. And start going a bit further back again. And then we're back into a more neutral here. Maybe a little bit of the bunching up. Yeah, still bunching up, still bunching up. Still bunching up. And then here, if I have her neutral pose, maybe it's slightly forward. There's something about it not being attached. Like, yeah, it needs to be a little bit more wrapped to her back. But now, if I have that pose, I have my bunch up pose, I can overshoot here. So we get a bit more of a stretch. Which for some reason isn't quite working. Just want to bring that stuff down together. Just so we feel that little spring in there. Keeping it neutral. Sorry, it's being very slow now. Damn. Big pause. Coincidentally, this is the exact same point in time that we had the issues last time it started freezing. We were doing blocking plus around this section of the shot, and maybe it's just this section. Maybe it doesn't like the scene. I don't know. But yeah, it's starting to get a bit chunky in our speed times. So left side here. Feeling nice like that. Keep it left side. Big drag. Still keeping it dragging there. Now I do want it to like start to follow through and come up here. Punch up. Continues to bunch up. Might even overshoot it. Yeah, I think we can overshoot quite a lot. Then it comes down, starts to drag behind. Still dragging, and then here is going to go to her right. So we're getting a bit of follow through. So I can actually ease into this. So again, because it's a lot of keys, I want to make sure that I get a nice follow through and timing of the breakdown, which the breakdown's around here. So this can ease out. Then this is easing in. Like that. And then it's going to ease out into the bunching up as we begin to drop. This can overshoot. Still overshoot. Then we get the follow through. This can be slightly further forward. And then this is forward and to her left. No, her right. Getting that nice follow through. We can also layer in a bit of the back over the top of it. This is going to slightly overshoot. Still overshooting. Still overshooting. Still overshooting, so now it's starting to drop. I'm gonna go a bit more into a neutral drag here to clean up that shape. Layering a bit of the drag still in there. And then this is where we're bunching up. Still bunching up. Still, oops. We're getting through this though. We're nearly halfway. Good luck with the stream. Got to head out. Great stuff. Look forward to the next one. Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. So we're coming through. I want to get a bit of drag in here. That needs to be more for sure. Can I default scale up? Yeah. Oh, that's a bit too much stretch. Then it's tucking in. You may get a little bit of like it coming forward here. Just a little bit of follow through. And then as we begin to drop, it's also going to bunch up. So it's going to overshoot. Then we're going to feel it come through here, and it's going to swing to the right. And then drag behind. Still dragging. And then as we come through, I also want it to overshoot to the right slightly. And then settle back. Oops, too early there. Here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. Then this is all neutral. Looks like we're getting a weird dip in her jacket though. I think her neutral's not correct there. There we go. Fix that. Fixing it up. Keeping those shapes clean. Then as we're coming back, in here, this could be very subtle, but we'll get a little bit of it going forward. And then here, it's going to start to go back. Still going back. Then as we're going back, we're going to layer in it going to the left. Still dragging. It's going to ease. Going to follow through a little bit to the back again. Then I want to overshoot slightly. Then it's going to ease back in. And then it needs to go to the left. Oh, her right, sorry. See how far, see how efficient you can be once you've got like the base of that library working though. I know I've said it a few times now, but it genuinely is just like such a game changer. And then I'm just going to put it into neutral here. Come on. I'm going to play Blaster soon. Once we get to this like settled point, I'm just going to hit play Blast and I think we'll call it there. But we're making good progress. I should be streaming tomorrow as well. So we should be able to make some good progress. Now that we spent quite a bit of time today doing the library, of course, but now we won't need to do that. We can just carry on and like plow our way through actually doing the animation part. So we're starting to compress. And then we're overshooting. And then we're going to drag here. And then we're getting that follow through again. We're going to overshoot. Continue to overshoot. And then we're easing out. We'll go to there. So let me rewind the timeline. Let me save that. And then we'll start to play blast and we'll see how it looks. I'll put audio back on. The song. We are now on version 56 of animation. So let's go. CYBERPHONK animation. Oh, it's not animation, it's play blast. Play blast. Here we go. 56. So, because this is going to take a while anyway, so I might as well answer these questions. So they have said to me, if you have a slow movement on twos, like building energy for the next action, should we add a lot of frames with tight spacing, or empty hold with a couple of frames? Aiming for something with snappy timing on twos and threes. Slow movements to build up energy. Yeah, so you can ease into it. You can go on twos, but if it's a slow build up, if it's subtle, it might be worth doing it on threes. Like maybe where it's slightly faster, nearer the breakdown, you go on twos, but then the closer you get to the key pose, you go more on threes. That way you read the movement a bit more. That's one option. You can keep it on twos, but maybe when you go on twos and it's very subtle, sometimes it looks too smooth, which defeats the purpose of keeping it on step frames. That's my logic. But you said, do we add a lot of frames? Yeah, so I would say the more subtle the action becomes, the more subtle you want, like the more time you want between your keys. So like you start off a bit faster in the breakdown and you go like okay, let's break this down. You have your key pose. As you're building up into it and it's quite subtle, you maybe want to go on threes, but then the closer you get to the breakdown, you go on twos for a little while, and then as soon as you come out of the breakdown again, you're easing in, you may go back onto threes. But again, it depends how it reads. You may want to go on twos for longer, you may want to go on threes for longer. But it's a good question. How do you know if there are too many poses or too few poses to preserve stop motion kind of style? Ooh. I would say it pretty depends. Stop motion is such a broad term. That's like saying 3D animation or 2D animation. It really does depend on, like, for instance, you've got things like something that Leica might do. So you got like Coraline or Kubo and the Two Strings, or like their new one, Wildwood, is very organic feeling, right? And that's like, I don't know if they've done it on ones or on twos, whatever it is, but it feels very smooth. And it's for like very progressive spacing, so it feels very organic and almost like realistic. Versus something like Aardman, where they kind of keep it a bit more snappy and they hold their poses for longer. So you don't need, for Aardman style, I'd say fewer poses, the better. It's more about readability of the pose and acting within it. Whereas stuff like Wildwood, they still do the same philosophy, but they're moving within the pose. So I would say that really the general rule of thumb is you want to have as few poses as possible that communicate your idea as clearly as possible. So you don't want to add poses for the sake of poses. Can you communicate your idea in less posing, or does it require more posing to sell the idea? Is my way of thinking about it. Can you talk about etiquettes for junior animators in productions? Do you how to disagree with notes? Can we suggest changes to production pipeline? Way of working? It's a good question. I would say if you disagree with a note, I don't think there's. I think there's a difference between saying I don't like that idea and here's a solution that I think maybe could work better. And a lot of it is show don't tell. A lot of the case, even regardless of what level you are. So if they've given you a note but you disagree with it, I would say try it. But then if you have the time, show another, or like it could be a rough version. It doesn't have to be polished, but do 2 rough versions, one with their idea and one with yours, and see which one works better. I know if you're on like a tight deadline, that's not always feasible, but you can still do it super rough and still convey your idea. I think it's plausible. If you disagree with the note strongly, and that way at least you have like a visual to sell your points, because it's different just to say I don't like your idea, I think this would be better, and then that can cause conflict. Whereas if you're like, I've tried your idea, but also I've tried this too, which one do you prefer? And then they could say, actually, no, you're right, your idea is better. Or they could say, no, I still prefer my one. And then as for vocalizing opinions about productions and way of working, it's very hard to do as a junior because you don't really have the experience under your belt to kind of like express. At the same time, I think like opinions are valid regardless of what level you are. So it's more about, I would communicate it to like your coordinator or your lead about your concerns, rather than like trying to raise it in like a really big way. Maybe kind of keep it subtle and small and just get their opinion on it, see what their perspective is on the situation. And maybe they disagree with you. Maybe they're like, yes, this is a problem. We know it's a problem, but we can't fix it for XYZ. Or, okay, let's see what we can do to fix that. And we'll raise it and let the leads or the production coordinator take it higher up in production, or animation lead can speak to like their animation director, etc., etc. So I'd work about it that way, rather than if you're already in a lead position, of course you can raise your concerns and they're already like heard straight away because you're in a higher position. So you kind of have to work up the hierarchy, share your concerns to the next one above you, and then let them drip feed it above them, etc., etc. That's how I would think about etiquette for juniors. But yeah, they're good questions. I can empathize with them. Cool. So I'm going to pause the music. We're going to give this a play, and then we're going to see how it looks with our jacket pass so far. So I think it's working, honestly. Like, this is kind of how I want it to feel. It shouldn't be noticeable. Not only that, but it's like, it's a very small piece of her character design. Like, it's literally, we're talking like half of her torso is flapping around. So in some areas I have slightly over exaggerated it just to make it read, but a lot of the time it's working when you frame through it, but you don't notice it too much when you're playing it through. But I think that's kind of the point. I don't want it to be like in your face noticeable, but it needs to be working and functionally as it should be. So yeah, I think as like there's nothing in there that was like really standing out to me. When you get into like these more subtle parts here, because nothing else is really moving, you kind of feel the overlap a little bit more on the jacket, which is nice, and it's in a subtle way. But when she's moving so broadly, you're not really noticing the jacket, which is kind of how it should be in my mind. So I think this is a good balance right now. I'm quite happy with how this pass is turning out. But yeah, this is as far as I'm going to take it today. Thank you all of you for joining. Um, and I should be around tomorrow as well. And we'll hopefully, maybe, we'll see how we get on. But we'll definitely, I reckon we'll finish the jacket pass tomorrow. And then maybe we'll already start on hair, maybe get halfway through hair, something like that. But then we near enough have a pass of her as like once we had the prop, there's a couple of props we need to add to, with like the newspaper and the gadget at the end. But I don't think that'll take very long, honestly. So then we should have a pass of her done for the sound design guys who are going to be there. They're going to pick this up at the end of the month. Um, so I have around 3 weeks roughly to get that pass out. I also need to do 2D effects, which I think is more important than crowd at this point. I think crowd will sell atmosphere and that will help with sound design later, give the atmosphere and that kind of stuff. But I think the broad strokes, like effects, is going to be more important for sound. So once we've got this pass of her jacket and hair done, we're going to work on to 2D effects. And they may not be fully tied down. I want to get like a pass, like a rough pass of 2D effects working first, so that all the foundations are laid, and then we'll go in and tie it all down because that might take some time. But yeah, that's the intention moving forward. So, like I say, thank you everyone, and I'll make sure to post an announcement tomorrow. But yeah, we're making good progress. So hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Catch you later.